because there's too many of us. It's a planet of finite resources, and we're using them up.
The truth finally comes out, doesn't it? Welcome back to Moose and Loose. My name's David. Today we've got a new report coming from the WWF, the World Wildlife Foundation, basically confirming that Canada is essentially net zero already. We don't need to be net zero. We are net zero. Now, this depends on whether there's forest fires or how big forest fires are every year, as that puts carbon into the atmosphere versus sucking it in. As you'll see in this video, Canada has a lot of peatlands, a lot of trees, a lot of biomass that sucks in carbon. The Liberals have had this data that I'm going to show you for the last 3 years, but didn't use this in their argument for the carbon tax. They're getting exposed for the absolute scammers and liars that they are. The carbon tax was a tax. That's all it was. A cash grab. They virtue signaled that it was for the environment, but in reality, as you'll see here, the founder of Greenpeace begs to differ. Let's jump into this. Thought this was interesting. Mark Carney posting this on the Prime Minister of Canada account. Time to bring the cup back to Canada. If Edmonton doesn't win, then it's just another loss for Canada. Canada needs a win right now, and he's desperately hoping that McDavid and the Oilers can bring it home, because he's got no wins for us. While you're watching the game, why don't you try putting a budget together? How many passports do you have? Next up, we got this one from Table Salt. It says, over the last 20 years, almost 100,000 Europeans have left both Scarborough and Mississauga, making them tied for municipalities experiencing the highest volume of European flight. So making that big there. You can see European at the top, 206,000 people. Many are returning to their home countries. 90s immigrants reach their retirement age and decide to go back to Eastern Europe. Canada has no bright future. Considering how expensive things are, people could sell their expensive Canadian home, go back to an Eastern European country and live quite literally in a castle. I mean, just looking on this website here, you can buy his castle for 600,000 euros, converted probably $1 million. I mean, the same as a Canadian house. Quite literally, you can trade in Canadian house for an 800-pound castle in South Ayrshire. You want to trade your Canadian house for this? That is the exchange. You could trade a house in Toronto or Vancouver or many other Canadian cities for this castle. Got this one from Shazzy Gully. It says, the great Canadian cottage dream is quietly dying in Muskoka. Inherited memories now coming with price tags, repairs, and zero buyers. Boomers want out, kids don't want in, and the market frozen in time. This isn't just a sale, it's surrender. They're seeing 10-year highs in listings in Muskoka. Sales in Muskoka down 50% year over year. On a single street, 3 cottages listed. Retirees driving the sell-off. 17% cite kids not wanting the cottage. Hoping to cash out, a wave of retiring cottage owners face a buyer's market. Yeah, no one has money to buy these cottages. Everything is too expensive. There's demand, there's just not prices they want. Muskoka Lake Cottage sounds nice, but at $1 million seasonal retreat isn't a desirable investment for young people. $750K for a cottage. That's just insane. Wow, look at this. Quebec is looking to slash their immigration targets in half. Table Salt saying here, float the idea of cutting services for non-residents. It's unfair for Quebecers who pay taxes, who are already struggling to see family doctors and find housing. Quebec Immigration Minister says he isn't ruling out the possibility of cutting services to non-permanent residents in the province if the federal government fails to halve its annual immigration targets. If we're forced to make difficult decisions, we'll make them. We're not at the point yet. We don't want to get there. He's underlining the provincial government has spent $500 million last year to support asylum seekers. The report describes a scenario considering bring down the number of permanent residents target to 66,500. Thresholds could be lowered to 45,000, 35,000, or 25,000 over the next 4 years. Immigrants admitted through their program here, which is currently suspended until November 30th, could decrease from 72,000 to 65,000 over the same period. The government could decrease number of international students from 128,000 to 110,000 by 2029. Quebec has had enough. What will happen here? The rest of Canada needs to adopt this. Yeah, truly, why should any taxpayer pay for any non-taxpayer? We really need to make sure when people come in that they're going to be paying taxes within a year of coming to Canada, or less, 6 months. We shouldn't be bringing in people who won't contribute to our society. That's the only way to grow our country. At least if it's a family coming in, somebody from that family has to be contributing. This means immigrants will flood into other provinces. Not good. All provinces need to do this. We've got quite the report coming from the WWF Foundation, the World Wildlife Foundation, mapping. They put together this report mapping Canada's carbon landscape. This just once and for all shows where the carbon's stored, gives the numbers based on data, sound data. Canada's first ever national carbon map reveals locations of billions, yes, billions of tons of carbon stored in ecosystems across the country. What we're seeing here, these numbers are in billion tons. This PG is billions of tons. 323 billion tons of total amount of carbon stored in Canada. You've got 98 billion billion tons stored in peat soils up to 1 meter deep. We'll get into this. There's some graphics here. 21 billion tons stored in plant biomass and 208 billion tons in other soils up to 1 meter. New study by the WWF Canada, led by scientists at McMaster University's Remote Sensing Lab, has measured for the first time how much carbon is stored in Canada's landscapes and where the biggest stores can be found. Canada stores a massive 323 PG, that's billion tons of carbon in its terrestrial ecosystems, equivalent to about 25 years of human-caused global greenhouse gas emissions at 2019 levels. So we scroll down here, here's a map of it, these darker areas where more carbon is stored. So basically just south of Hudson's Bay, Vancouver Island, BC coast, also up north here. So there is an interactive map, which is what we see here, Canada storage in carbon. So basically the darker areas, and you can see here in a second, this website is very slow. It gives you a number if you mouse over it. So right there, very high, 14 million tons of carbon in this little spot. All these dark areas higher than the lighter areas, 29 million tons over here, 8 million, 2 million. Go somewhere lighter like this, 1.2 million. So if you zoom in on this map, so this is Hudson Bay right here. There's little squares and every single square has a number to it. So 7 million, 7.2 million, 6 million, etc. So they literally mapped out all of Canada. There's no more question of how much carbon gets stored in our country. As it shows here, here's a cross-sectional example. Basically, the peatlands store the most carbon. The forests store a lot, but most of it actually stored in the first meter of soil. So you're seeing the difference here, 4.3 in the trees. Below the trees, only 1.2, just soil is 36, and then the peatland 158. So it's the majority of the carbon gets stored in the soil, specifically the peatlands. So these two maps show it. This one here is the biomass carbon we can see across Canada, and this one here is the soil carbon. So really, when it comes to protecting the environment or climate change, the Liberals should be trying to protect the peatlands. This report was just put together, but the data actually came from a couple of years ago, meaning the Liberals have had this data since 2022. So we look at the source report here. This is the raw data. Scrolling down, what do we find? It says right here, terrestrial ecosystems store a large amount of carbon in plants and soils. As I just showed you, play an important role. This whole calculating how much carbon all this is very complex. We'll just say that up front because if there's a forest fire, it releases a bunch of that back into the environment, as well as many other factors, because if there's a lot of farming or new logging cuts or whatever it may be, that releases a bunch of carbon. But just looking at the numbers here, terrestrial ecosystems net primary productivity is estimated at 1.27 petagrams of carbon. 1.27 petagrams is 1.2 billion tons of carbon. 1.2 billion. Now, if we look at the government's own website here, this is the Canada Energy Regulator, their own website here. This is all government data and charts. What we're seeing here, the total GHG greenhouse gas emissions chart here, and this is projected net zero. It's hilarious. It's right here. Global net zero scenario. Yeah, that's not happening. Let's get real. So this is the actual projected target here. But further, right on the Government of Canada website, the greenhouse gas emissions that has the exact numbers here, most up to date, right here with the numbers. You can see roughly 759, 728, 741, around 700 to 750 million tons of greenhouse gases. Remember the number I just said, 1.27 billion, meaning Canada's land mass and biomass and peatlands is absorbing more than we're putting into the environment. Once again, though, once you have forest fires, these numbers change a lot. What comes down to it, either Canada is not contributing to climate change at all. We're already net zero, we're net negative, or we might be slightly contributing some years and less other years. Either way, Canada is not affecting the climate. Paying more money to taxes doesn't affect the weather. And in the case of Mark Carney's government right now, he needs to get rid of the industrial carbon tax. It doesn't help our country. It doesn't help our economy. And the numbers are right here. I mean, just in 2023, 649 million tons. We see it right here. Megatons of carbon dioxide equivalent. Megatons is millions. So strictly based off the numbers, we're pretty close to net zero. We could be a little over, a little under. It's time to get serious about our country. This climate agenda that Trudeau brought in, Mark Carney still continuing on with the industrial carbon tax. It's all hogwash. It's absolute nonsense. It's lies. It's just taxes. With all this in mind, we've got World Economic Forum's Jane Goodall suggesting that reducing the human population down to 500 million people, a drastic 93% reduction from today's numbers, would make the world a much better place.
We cannot hide away from human population growth because, you know, it underlies so many of the other problems. All these things we talk about wouldn't be a problem if there was the size of population that there was 500 years ago.
The hypocrisy coming from someone this old. She's lived a long life, but she wants to cut population.
My name is Jane Goodall. My age is 80. My job is giving people hope. if I'm allowed to change a few things, if I just have this magic power, I would like to, without causing any pain or suffering, reduce the number of people on the planet, because there's too many of us. It's a planet of finite resources and we're using them up. But what I really, really, really would love to change is the unsustainable lifestyle of everybody else. We're just greedy.
I bet you if we took a look through her life, we would find so many violations of unsustainable life. Does she drive a car? Does she buy food from the grocery store? Does she buy clothes? Obviously, she's wearing clothes. Are they all handmade by Tibetan monks from yak wool in the upper mountains? I don't think so. She also prefers to live with monkeys.
One of my missions is to turn on its head the idea that carbon dioxide is a pollutant and somehow dangerous, when in fact it is the most important nutrient for all life on Earth, and without it this would be a dead planet. So I say not only is carbon dioxide good, it is essential, and it's a good thing that we are putting some more carbon dioxide in the atmosphere because it was running low before we came along.
CO2, we know its benefits for plants, but it is a known greenhouse gas, and we're pumping too much of it in, leading to global warming.
Well, actually, it may be a known greenhouse gas, but it's not known how strong it is in terms of changing the Earth's temperature. And so far in this century, there has been zero warming from a statistically significant basis, and the UK Met Office says so, yet 1/3 of all human CO2 emissions have been put into the atmosphere in the last 18 years. So it doesn't look like a lockstep causal relationship between increasing CO2 and warming of the Earth.
Are you seriously suggesting we should be pumping more stuff in, polluting the Earth more, building more coal-fired power stations just so we can make sure that the CO2 levels are good?
No, I'm not, because we're putting plenty of CO2 into the atmosphere. We don't need to do it this quickly, but if we bring it up to a higher level than it is today, we will get immediately an increase in the growth of crops and trees, which is not a bad thing. In the long run, though, it doesn't matter if we bring it down quite a bit. And so that's why I'm supportive of nuclear energy and of natural gas. This tendency to go in the rich countries to wind and solar is a giant waste of money. Those wind farms will rust in place, and there is no fun to decommission them when they either wear out or we decide how ridiculous it is to spend so much money for so little electricity that isn't even reliable.
Michael Schellenberger, who started up a solar company, went through the motions of it and realized that it was an absolute disaster. The return on the power is terrible. It's bad for the environment. They don't recycle them. He did a TED Talk on this, and the final conclusion, nuclear power. That's the cleanest, greenest. It's the best way to go. That's what every country should be aiming towards.
What are you saying about energy policy now to the ideas of decarbonisation to cut? Is everyone wrong?
Yes, they're wrong if they are actually basing their energy policy on decarbonization. They're not wrong to base their energy policy on cost effectiveness, on pollution control, which is why moving from coal to gas makes sense if you have it. But India has coal, and India has 300 million people with no electricity. What do we expect them to do? Of course they're going to build coal plants, but India is also building a lot more nuclear plants than the UK is right now, and it doesn't have the emissions of a coal plant. And China is building huge hydroelectric dams, which don't have the emissions of coal plants. So many of these countries are doing their bit without wasting all this money on wind and solar energy, which is unreliable and prohibitively expensive in the long run.
Why is this consensus out there?
Look, if we had definitive proof that CO2 was causing serious problems and we could prove it, don't you think they would write that down on a piece of paper somewhere so people could read it? They don't have definitive proof, period, in science. I'm a student of the philosophy and history of science, and I know that the scientific method has not been applied in such a way as to prove that carbon dioxide is causing the Earth to warm.
You think in a few years, say 50 years from now, people go, that was a really stupid period in our history when we tried to change all our energy policies to cut this gas?
I am firmly of the belief that the future will show that this whole hysteria over climate change was a complete fabrication.
Wow. And we know who is behind all of that. It's our Prime Minister, Mark Carney. This is coming from the founder of Greenpeace. This is not some random person. This is not even a professor. It's the founder of Greenpeace. Fellow Canadians, please pull your head out of the sand for all our sakes. We would love to hear this gentleman speak in Ottawa at the House of Commons. You bet. Bring him in.